So here's some ways to get free tax preparation and filing. Go to the irs.gov website, and they have a button, a link that says file your tax returns for free. And they have partnered with a myriad of different for-profit companies. All the ones that come to your mind, they have agreed to prepare tax returns, and I think it goes up to something like 70,000 of income. So it's a significant amount of income for individuals. They often will do senior citizens and veterans as well. So go to this website, click on there, and then there are software packages that will prepare your tax return through question and answer and electronically file it for free. If you're not comfortable with that, then still there's another resource. The IRS, and I say this very sincerely, having worked hand in glove with them for decades, they want to work with taxpayers. The worst thing you can do is ignore them. So do not ignore the letters, be responsive. They are sympathetic, especially during COVID. They understand people are under terrible financial hardships. So you need to be responsive. And the good news is there are resources. So let me talk about the various resources that are across the country. There are low-income taxpayer clinics pretty much in every state and in every major city that will help taxpayers navigate tax controversy matters. So not filing your tax return, but if the IRS is objecting to something in your tax return or you receive some sort of notice, they will work with you. All you have to do to find one is go onto the irs.gov website and search low-income taxpayer clinics, and then a map will come up. And that map, you just check the box on your state, and it will give you the name, the address, and the telephone number. And usually all of them have a 1-800 number for you to reach out to them. They only work with taxpayers who are at 250% of the poverty threshold. That actually, because of the pandemic, might capture more people. If they aren't able to help you because your income level is too high, they might be able to refer you to someone. In addition, the IRS does have on its website paid tax preparers. And so you can look at that as a resource as well. But the way that the tax system works, as I said, the taxpayer has the burden of proof. And so if the IRS objects to something on your tax return, you have to prove why you can claim that deduction or didn't report that income or get the credit. And you quite often can navigate it yourself by writing in plain English and demonstrating it with copies of documents, etc. And be patient because it's a slow, laborious process. Be patient. And the good news is the IRS has gotten a little bit better in that, from a computer literacy side, in that you can go online right now and get your own tax transcripts. And so that will show what tax returns they've received, if you have a liability, what issues are being presented. And those are, you can see it right on the main page of the IRS website. It's called Tax Transcripts. And there will be checks and balances, of course, to make sure it's you so other people can't access your personal data. So you first try to respond to the IRS by writing them letters, and if for some reason they're not responsive, or you just cannot come to a meeting of the minds. By the way, there's lots of opportunity to elevate it even above the auditor to a higher level, like an administrative agency, kind of moving up the ladder. And if at the end you cannot come to a meeting of the minds, then the IRS will issue a notice of deficiency. And that is basically saying, we're going to assess a tax liability on you. The good news is that's not the end. You have 90 days to file a petition in tax court. Tax court is a federal court, and that is the only trial court for tax matters where you do not have to pay the deficiency. So you just file a petition. And by the way, the US tax court has a website, and it's quite easy to file a tax court petition. Doesn't require much. They have information on their website, or maybe someone in this low-income taxpayer clinic can help you. But if you file a petition in tax court does have a small case division. And the small case division has a very relaxed level of evidence rules, etc. And the amount in controversy for the small case division is $50,000 or less. So it's a pretty high threshold. So tax court actually travels. So they're based in Washington, D.C., but the judges travel and come to every city, major city across the country. So in Nevada, my home state, they come to Las Vegas typically 2 or 3 times a year, and then they go to Northern Nevada, Reno, once a year. Now, because of the pandemic, they're doing it remotely. So that's good news and bad news for folks maybe who are not geographically too close to a tax court. So it maybe makes it more efficient. But as soon as you file a tax court petition, and by the way, most taxpayers in tax court are represented by themselves. They represent themselves, which in some ways is tragic, because there should be more access to tax justice, more resources. And folks like myself and others in the low-income taxpayer community, we represent individuals on a pro bono, meaning for free basis. And again, those low-income taxpayer clinics will do it for free. More good news. Even once your case goes to tax court, the IRS and the lawyers that represent the government in tax court are the IRS chief counsel lawyers. By the way, in my opinion, wonderful lawyers, very nice, good people, generally speaking. They want to settle your case. So they're going to reach out to you and they're going to try to settle it. They do not want to litigate cases, and very, very, very few cases in tax court go to trial. An example, Las Vegas, a big city. We usually have about 105 cases on our calendar call 2 or 3 times a year. And even by the time we have trials, we maybe have 2 out of 105. All the other ones are deferred or settled or worked out. And the tax court judges also work really hard to push the IRS to try to work with taxpayers. So one of the frustrating things for all of us, because the IRS communicates by mail, and they might not have your most current address, especially if you've had a hardship and are moving around, the tax court really pushes them If you haven't been responsive, I've even seen tax court judges that will try to call the taxpayer. They really want you to have your fair share of a voice in court. Well, if you do lose in tax court, then you have a deficiency that you have to pay with interest and penalties. But that isn't necessarily the end of the story. And tax court judges, it's really not their under their jurisdiction to explain this to you, but I'm going to explain it to you. So let's suppose you lose in tax court an error, you didn't understand something, so you owe a significant tax liability with interest and penalties. And because of your current financial situation, you cannot pay that liability, or you can pay some of it, but not all of it. The good news is there's an opportunity to submit an offer in compromise. And what that is you demonstrate, based upon your financial situation, including all of your assets, all of your liabilities, your income, your expenses, how much you have left over. They will take that amount that you have left over, but they will, if that's all you can pay, that's all you can pay. And they will work with you. Again, you can either do this yourself. I have had friends who have been able to navigate it themselves, but quite often these were people who were relatively sophisticated. But again, you can go to a low-income taxpayer clinic and they will help you navigate an offer and compromise. So that is an alternative. And I will also say, many state taxing authorities, including the state of Nevada, where I'm a commissioner, we have a similar opportunity for offers and compromise. And we will work with taxpayers to manage their tax liability in a way that will not put them out on the streets. Well, you're spot on. And that is that every employer, every contractor, including, by the way, Uber, Lyft, and all those companies, they issue 1099s. And they're actually motivated to issue those, because if they don't, there's a $50 penalty for them for every 1099 not issued. In addition, it supports their deduction, right? If they're paying you, they want to document that deduction. So the IRS has all of this information, your W-2s, your 1099s from being an independent contractor, interest, dividends, stock sales. So if you sell stock, they have the gross proceeds. They often don't have your basis, meaning the cost that you paid for the shares. But if you don't file a tax return, they will often do something called a substitute return. They will take that information if you're significantly delinquent, and they will calculate your tax liability, but they will base it on the most conservative position. So, for example, they're not going to claim any dependents. They're not going to claim you as married filing jointly. They're going to claim you as single, all of this income, and no deductions, because they don't have your deductions. They have income. And so I have seen taxpayers get this substitute for return, and it could be 3 times as much as what the real liability is. Once again, as you said, the way you push back against this is to file timely and accurate returns. Even when they file this substitute return, you have an opportunity to represent the accurate information. At no time does the IRS not give you an opportunity to respond. The only problem is that opportunity could be a short period of time. And if with mail delays and you not going to your mailbox, it could feel like too short of a time. So the statute of limitations is 3 years from the due date or the date of filing, whichever is later. So if you don't file, if you're only now filing your 2015 tax return, it's 3 years from the date of filing that they have to assess a deficiency. Now, if you never file, the statute of limitations hasn't even started to run. So you have to file to start it. Moreover, if you commit fraud, then the statute of limitations is open-ended as well. So they absolutely do not need to have any sort of reason. And in fact, there used to be, when the IRS was better funded, something that was like a random audit, and they would ask you about every single line on your tax return. And I can remember representing clients who had that audit. Those were random and no, random selection. But because the IRS is so underfunded, they're responding to Congress, and because Congress is really focused, I think, inappropriately on low-income taxpayers and the earned income tax credit, they're over-auditing the earned income tax credit. So 43% of all audits in 2018, 43%, included an earned income tax credit. That means necessarily that's a lower income family with children. So that is a characteristic that often gets picked up for audit. In addition, many taxpayers will receive notices. And so back to what you were saying, the IRS has all this data. And so if they have information and their big computer in the sky or wherever it is in the clouds, it matches all that information to your tax return. And if there's some information they have that doesn't show up on your tax return, they will automatically send you a notice. Now, that's not necessarily an audit, but some people feel like it is. It's kind of a correspondence request. And they will, the letter will be drafted in a way, and I work with law students, that it feels like that letter is conclusory. It will say, you didn't, we do not believe you included this on your tax return. Therefore, you owe us $1,000. If you don't agree with us, tell us why and respond by this date. Interest and penalties will accrue as appropriate. So you've got to respond to it. They often send those for refundable credits. So a lot of my students, higher education students, get these notices to prove that they are in school and have paid tuition. And again, that is easily demonstrated by the documentation that they have transcripts of their grades from the university, loans, because most students are paying for college with loans. They can document it, but if they don't respond, they lose. And so you have to respond. I want to make sure that everyone out there seriously considers filing your tax returns electronically. I also want you to seriously consider, and I feel that it's very trustworthy. A lot of your information is out there, and use reliable websites, and I'm going to tell you how to access those. So file electronically and include your bank data, because that way your deposit can be automatically deposited, and that will expedite your refunds significantly. Moreover, the IRS cannot put money into your bank account without your authorization. We are expecting Congress to push out more COVID relief, so you want them to have your current bank account. It is a nightmare if they have an old bank account. It will likely bounce, but then you'll get a paper check, and that just takes longer and longer amount of time. So here's some ways to get free tax preparation and filing. Go to the irs.gov website, and they have a button, a link that says file your tax returns for free. And they have partnered with a myriad of different for-profit companies. All the ones that come to your mind, they have agreed to prepare tax returns, and I think it goes up to something like 70,000 of income. So it's a significant amount of income for individuals. They often will do senior citizens and veterans as well. So go to this website, click on there, and then there are software packages that will prepare your tax return through question and answer and electronically file it for free. If you're not comfortable with that, then still there's another resource, and that is volunteer income tax assistance. Pretty much every major town, major city across the US has VITA programs, and they will prepare your tax returns for free. And many of them are doing what we're calling virtual VITA. So they're accommodating online preparation. How do you find out the closest VITA site? Again, the IRS website, just search free tax services or VITA, and it'll come up with a map, and all you have to do is put in your zip code, and it'll come up with sites and their hours of operation, etc. This tax season, it is important to file, and if you haven't already received your COVID relief, my goodness, file as soon as you can to get that COVID relief. But make sure you have all of your data. It is better to file a complete and accurate return a little bit later than to file early and have to amend. The good news is the IRS has now said that they will accept amended tax returns electronically. Those used to have to be filed by mail. In addition, we are starting to hear from members of Congress some serious pushback on the IRS to consider extending this tax filing deadline. So that very well might happen. But if you haven't, I have students who perhaps didn't file in 18 or 19, so they didn't get any COVID relief. They're going to file their tax returns right away to get that COVID relief and make sure they're in the system for the new COVID relief, which we hope will be forthcoming in March or so. So use the IRS website for free resources, and do not hesitate to go to another resource. It's called the Taxpayer Advocate Service, TAS, Taxpayer Advocate Service. And they are to help taxpayers who are in a real hardship. Maybe you feel like you're going to be evicted if you don't get your tax refund. They can go to the mat for you and get your refund. They can even get tax liability offsets removed if you owe back taxes. Every major city or state has a local taxpayer advocate. You can call them and they're there to help you. So the most important thing for tax situations is do not ignore it. Communicate with people in an honest, candid manner, and they will work with you. And that means federal and state. My experience with most state taxing authorities, honestly, is they're easier to get in touch with. Their lines are not as busy, and they do, especially now during COVID, they want to help.